So we'll be discussing about fetal skull and maternal pelvis. This is for the YY exam, for the undergraduate exam. So you have already seen the fetal skull and the maternal pelvis. So we are using the whole fetus for demonstration of breech presentation only. Otherwise, most of the demonstrations of occiput anterior or vertex presentation, occiput posterior are done using only fetal skull only. Okay, only for breech presentations use the whole of the fetus module. Okay, so coming to the fetal skull, what are the important points in the fetal skull? First, you should remember about the suture lines. So you know that there are joining points for the flat bones in the skull vault. So this is actually the center one is actually the sagittal suture. This is the frontal suture. Frontal suture separates the two frontal bones. Sagittal suture separates between the two parietal bones, and there is a coronal sutures in the front. So coronal sutures actually separate the frontal from the parietal bone, and behind you have a lambdoid suture. Okay, so lambdoid suture actually separates the occipital bone from the parietal bone. Okay, so the space created between the junction of the sutures is actually the fontanelle. There are two clinically significant fontanelle. One is the anterior fontanelle, the other one is actually the posterior fontanelle. Okay, so the anterior fontanelle is also called as bregma. Okay, anterior fontanelle is also called as bregma, and posterior fontanelle is also called as lambda. Okay, so these are the important things. Then you should know about the presenting part. I hope you already know what you mean by presentation. Presentation is nothing but lower pole of, it's a part of the fetus which is occupying the lower pole of the uterus. Presenting part is the part of the presentation which overlays the internal os. So that is felt during the pelvic examination. Okay, so generally we say vertex is the presenting part. Okay, so in cephalic presentation itself there can be vertex, there can be face, there can be bro as a presenting part. So okay, so sometimes in the exam they'll ask you to demonstrate vertex. Okay, so how do you demonstrate vertex is actually, so it is a quadrangular area which is between the coronal and the lambdoid sutures. Okay, so both of your index fingers should be at the coronal sutures, and it should meet in the anterior fontanelle, and posteriorly your thumb should be over the lambdoid sutures meeting at the posterior fontanelle or the lambda. Okay, and on the either side it is the line joining the two parietal eminences. So this is the quadrangular area. So they'll ask you how do you show the vertex. So vertex is nothing but the quadrangular area which is occupied by coronal sutures and anterior fontanelle in the anterior part. Posteriorly it is bounded by the posterior fontanelle and the lambdoid sutures, and on the either side it is the line passing the parietal eminences. So this is the quadrangular area which is called as a vertex presentation. Then how do you show bro presentation? So bro presentation is nothing but actually it is starting from the, again it is from the coronal sutures and the anterior fontanelle in the posterior part, and supraorbital ridges and the root of the nose. So the root of the nose is also called as glabella. Okay, so it is between the supraorbital ridges, glabella in the front, and coronal sutures and the anterior fontanelle in the back. So this part is actually called as bro presentation. Okay, so what you call as face presentation is actually, again it is back, in the back it is from the glabella and the supraorbital ridges to the junction of the floor of the mouth with the neck. Okay, or the mental bone. It is from the mentum and the, on the other side it is the junction of the floor of the mouth with the neck. Okay, so this part is actually the face presentation. Okay, so these are the important presenting part we should remember: vertex, bro, and the face as a presenting part you should be able to show. Generally they will ask you how do you demonstrate vertex presentation. Okay, so coming to the diameters, important diameters, you should remember the engaging diameter. So there are antero-posterior engaging diameter and there is a transverse engaging diameter. Okay, so antero-posterior engaging diameters are totally 6. Okay, so in that from posterior to anterior is 3 diameters, from anterior to the posterior are 3 diameters. So totally AP diameters are 6. Okay, transverse diameters we have 4 engaging transverse diameters. Okay, so coming to the antero-posterior diameter, in that, so we usually take the important point will be from posterior to anterior. So for the first diameter is actually suboccipito-bregmatic. So bregma is nothing but the anterior fontanelle. Okay, so suboccipito is the, it is below the occiput. So it is actually the below the, it is almost on the nape of the neck. Okay, so this is from the nape of the neck to the center of the anterior fontanelle. Okay, so this diameter is actually suboccipito-bregmatic. Okay, from the nape of the neck to the center part of the bregma. Okay, so that is suboccipito-bregmatic. So here we cannot exactly show the nape of the neck, so I am just holding below the occipital protuberance. Okay, so from the nape of the neck to the center part of the bregma is suboccipitobregmatic. This is a very well flexed head, which is a vertex. Okay, this is approximately around 9.5 centimeter, suboccipitobregmatic. Okay, next is actually you have suboccipitofrontal. Okay, so again suboccipito is again from the nape of the neck, to the anterior end of the anterior fontanelle. Okay, suboccipitobregmatic was to the center of the bregma. Here it is suboccipitofrontal. So this is to the anterior end of the anterior fontanelle. So from the nape of the neck to the anterior end of the anterior fontanelle, that is suboccipitofrontal, this is approximately 10.5 centimeters. Okay, so next you have occipitofrontal. So not from the nape of the neck. Now it is slightly deflexed head. It is actually slightly deflexed. So the point starts from the occipital protuberance to the anterior end of the anterior fontanelle. So that is occipitofrontal. Okay, so this is 11.5 centimeter. So here the head is actually slightly deflexed. Okay, so in a very well flexed head it was suboccipitobregmatic. In a slightly deflexed head it will be suboccipitofrontal. In a completely deflexed head it will be occipitofrontal. Okay, so occipitofrontal is around 11.5 centimeter. Okay, so coming to the other three anteroposterior diameter. So here we are starting from anterior to posterior. Okay, so the other three AP diameters include, first one is actually mentovertical. Okay, so mentovertical is from the chin is taken as a point here. So from the midpoint of the chin to the highest point on the sagittal suture. Okay, so from the midpoint of the chin to the highest point on the sagittal suture is called as actually mentovertical diameter. This is approximately 14 centimeters. Okay, so this is one of the highest diameter, and you know that no diameter in the pelvis is around 14 centimeter. So this is actually the engaging diameter in the bro presentation, which cannot be delivered vaginally. Okay, so mentovertical is from the center of the mentum to the highest point on the sagittal suture, that is mentovertical. Okay, so next is actually mentobregmatic. So that is again from the mentum, but to the center to the from the submentobregmatic. So the other point is actually from the submentum, that is junction of the floor of the mouth with the neck to the highest point on the sagittal suture. Okay, so that is submentovertical. So the first one was mentovertical, second one is submentovertical. Submentovertical is from the junction of the floor of the mouth with the neck to the highest point on the sagittal suture, that is around 11.5 centimeter. Okay, next is submentobregmatic. Okay, so the third diameter is again from the junction of the floor of the mouth with the neck to the center point of the bregma, that is submentobregmatic. This is actually completely extended, hyper extended, that is a face presentation. Okay, and this is also the diameter is around 9.5 centimeters. Okay, so you should remember there is a suboccipitobregmatic, there is suboccipitofrontal, then you have a occipitofrontal. Okay, then from anterior to posterior you should remember there is a mentovertical, then there is a submentovertical. Okay, then there is a submentobregmatic. Okay, so these are the total 6 diameters which you should remember. Okay, that is a 6 anteroposterior diameter, engaging diameter. So then what you should remember is a transverse engaging diameter. So transverse engaging diameter, the commonest transverse engaging diameter is actually biparietal diameter. Okay, so biparietal diameter is nothing but point from one parietal eminence to the other parietal eminence. Okay, so this is the biparietal diameter. This is approximately 9.5 centimeters. Okay, so the other second transverse diameter is actually super subparietal. Okay, where the one point is actually just in front of the parietal eminence to the other point is just below the parietal eminence of the other parietal bone. So this is actually super subparietal bone. We know that generally in the engaging diameter, sagittal suture is not exactly in the center. So most of the time it is asynclitism, that is it is either tilted towards the pubic symphysis or it is tilted towards the sacrum. So it is not typically biparietal. So BPD, though we call BPD as a commonest transverse engaging diameter, most of the time it is actually super subparietal engaging diameter. So super subparietal is around 8.5 centimeter. So it is one point, from on one side it is just below the parietal eminence, the other side it is just above the parietal eminence. So that is super subparietal is the another second transverse engaging diameter. Third is the third engaging diameter, transverse diameter, not engaging. third transverse diameter of the fetal skull is actually bitemporal diameter. So bitemporal diameter, you can see the anteroinferior end of the coronal sutures. So this is from one anteroinferior end of the coronal suture to the other anteroinferior end of the coronal suture. So this is bitemporal diameter. Okay, so it is, the diameter is in between the two anteroinferior ends of the coronal sutures. That is bitemporal diameter. Bitemporal diameter is generally not a engaging diameter. Okay, so this is one of the transverse diameter of the pelvis. The importance of bitemporal diameter is that, so when you know that when the head is delivering by extension, okay, so it's a well flexed head. When the head is delivering it out, when the head is getting delivered, okay, so when the head is getting delivered by extension, so it is the bitemporal diameter is the one which sweeps over the perineum. Okay, so you know the occiput is reaching against the pubic symphysis. Bitemporal diameter, the face sweeps over the maternal perineum and then comes out. Okay, so bitemporal diameter is the one which sweeps over the perineum. Okay, so that is a emerging diameter of the fetal skull. Okay, so the importance of bitemporal diameter is that it is a emerging diameter in the occiputo-anterior presentations. Okay, so that is the importance of bitemporal diameter. It is not a engaging diameter by itself. Okay, but it is one of the transverse diameters which is important as a emerging diameter over the over the maternal perineum when it is occiputo-anterior presentations. Okay, so one more important thing what you should remember is, in occiputo-posterior presentations, when the occiput is towards the maternal pelvis, in the occiputo-posterior presentation, it is the BPD which is the emerging diameter. That is, biparietal diameter is the one which stretches over the maternal perineum and it comes out. Okay, so BPD is actually a bigger diameter which is 9.5. Bitemporal diameter is actually only 7.5. So in occiputo-anterior presentations, it was only 7.5 diameter was the one which is stretching the maternal perineum. Okay, in occiputo-posterior, it is the BPD, it is a biparietal diameter which stretches the maternal perineum. Okay, that is why more perineal tears and sphincter tears are more common with the occiputo-posterior presentations. Okay, so bitemporal diameter, the importance is that it is a emerging diameter in the occiputo-anterior. So that is the third transverse diameter which you should remember. The fourth transverse diameter is actually bimastoid diameter. So bimastoid diameter is between the two inner surface of the two mastoid processes. It is around 7.5 centimeter. Okay, so bimastoid is between two mastoid processes. It is around 7.5 centimeters. The importance of bimastoid diameter is that it is a non-compressible diameter. So what do you mean by non-compressible is, it is the diameter which represents the base of the skull. Okay, like in case of BPD or even the bitemporal, in case if you want to do a destructive surgery, like baby is dead, fetus is dead, you can do a craniotomy and you can decompress these diameters. BPD can be decompressed by doing a craniotomy. Okay, but not bimastoid. Bimastoid is the one diameter which cannot be decompressed with any destructive surgeries. Okay, so that is the reason even for the severe CPD, one of the definition too for severe CPD is if any one of the diameter of the pelvis is actually less than 7.5, it will be considered as, even one diameter is less than 7.5, it will be considered as a severely contracted pelvis. The reason is because bimastoid diameter is actually 7.5, which is a non-compressible diameter. That much diameter has to be there in the pelvis for it to pass through. Okay, so these are the diameters. So you should remember the anteroposterior diameters, you should remember the transverse diameters. So transverse diameters, biparietal diameter, super subparietal diameter, bitemporal diameter, and you have a bimastoid. Okay, so 4 transverse diameter and 6 AP diameters. Okay, so this is about fetal skull. Okay, so next we'll go on to the maternal pelvis. Okay, so coming to the maternal pelvis, when you are holding the maternal pelvis also, you should hold that it makes a angle of around 55 degrees to the horizontal. Okay, so you should tilt the pelvis, see to it that the pubic symphysis and the anterior superior iliac spine, okay, yes, anterior superior iliac spine, both are in the same vertical plane. So that is, if you keep one book against this, okay, so both pubic symphysis and anterior superior iliac spine should touch the book in one plane. So that is they should be in the same vertical plane, whereas pubic symphysis upper border of the pubic symphysis to the and the tip of the sacrum, they should be in the same horizontal plane. Okay, so pubic symphysis and anterior superior iliac spine should be in the same vertical plane, and the pubic symphysis and the tip of the sacrum should be in the same horizontal plane. Okay, the plane of the pelvic inlet actually makes around 55 degrees with the horizontal plane. Okay, so that should be the normal pelvic inclination. That is how you should hold the pelvis. So when you are holding in the exam also, with your left hand hold the sacrum, with the fingers hold the sacrum, with the thumb keep it behind the sacrum. Okay, here the sacrum is not stable, so I am just holding in the iliac bones, and keep a tilt like this when you want to demonstrate. Okay, so in the pelvis we have something called as actually pelvic inlet, then there is a cavity, then there is an outlet. Okay, we should know the important diameters of all these three. Okay, in the pelvic inlet you should know something called as boundaries of the pelvic inlet. Okay, so first is the boundaries of the pelvic inlet, then diameters of the pelvic inlet. What are the anteroposterior, transverse and the oblique diameters in the pelvic inlet? What are the diameters in the cavity? What are the diameters in the outlet? Okay, these are the important things what we should remember. Okay, so coming to the what are the borders in the pelvic inlet? What are the landmarks in the true pelvis are the pelvic inlet? So from anteroposteriorly we will start. So here anteriorly it is the upper border of the pubic symphysis. Then you have a pubic crest. Okay, you have a pubic tubercle. Okay, then you have a pectineal line, iliopubic eminence, iliopectineal line. Then there is a joint, sacro-iliac joint, anterior border of the ala of the sacrum, and then there is a sacral promontory. So on either side these form the pelvic inlet. I will repeat again. This is the pubic symphysis, upper border of the pubic symphysis, pubic crest, pubic tubercle, then you have a pectineal line, iliopubic eminence, iliopectineal line, and then you have a sacro-iliac joint, anterior border of the ala of the sacrum, and sacral promontory. On the either side these form the boundaries of the pelvic inlet. Okay, so starting from the diameters of the inlet, so we'll start with the inlet. So in the pelvic inlet actually the AP diameter is smaller compared to the transverse diameter. Okay, so in the pelvic inlet actually AP diameter is smaller compared to the transverse diameter. In the cavity it is uniformly round in shape. In the outlet it is the AP diameter is bigger. Okay, anteroposterior diameter is actually bigger because of the movement of the coccyx. Okay, so AP diameter is actually bigger compared to the transverse diameter. Okay, so here generally in the mechanism of labor also usually head goes into the plane which is maximum, which is easily available, whichever is a bigger diameter, generally head engages in that plane. Okay, so in the inlet it is the transverse is the one which is bigger, whereas in the outlet it is actually the anteroposterior which is the bigger. Okay, so whatever movements happen at the level of the presentation when it is going through its journey through the pelvis, that is called as mechanism of labor. Okay, so measurements also it is not very difficult to remember. So here it is anteroposterior diameter is actually from the upper border of the pubic symphysis to the center point of the sacral promontory. Okay, so this is the actually anteroposterior diameter of the inlet. It is also called as true conjugate. So because that is a true diameter of the inlet, that is why it is also called as true conjugate. This is approximately 11 centimeter. Okay, so you should remember 11, 12 is oblique, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so 12 is oblique diameter, that is from the one sacro-iliac joint to the highest on the other side it is the iliopubic eminence on the other side. So one sacro-iliac joint to the iliopubic eminence. Okay, so right and left will depend upon the maternal sacro-iliac joint. So right oblique diameter in the inlet is actually from the right sacro-iliac joint to the left iliopubic eminence. Okay, so that is right oblique diameter. Okay, that is approximately 12 centimeter. 13 centimeter is the one which is the transverse diameter of the inlet. Okay, so the transverse diameter of the inlet is actually from the farthest points. There are two farthest points on the iliopectineal line. So these are the iliopectineal lines. The farthest points on the two iliopectineal lines is called as transverse diameter. Okay, so 11, 12, 13. That is why that's how you remember. Okay, in the inlet we have actually 3 anteroposterior diameter. What I mentioned was a true conjugate, that is a true diameter, true anteroposterior diameter, that is true conjugate, which is 11 centimeter. there are three anteroposterior diameter which is of obstetric significance. One is true, second one is a obstetric conjugate. Okay, that is the shortest distance from the sacral promontory to the inner surface of the pubic symphysis. Okay, so that is the shortest. That is why it is of a obstetric significance. That is why it is also called as obstetric conjugate. Okay, true conjugate was from the upper border of the pubic symphysis to the midpoint of the sacrum. Okay, again from midpoint of the sacrum to the nearest point are the most prominent part in the pubic symphysis is actually obstetric conjugate. Okay, so the third one is actually diagonal conjugate, that is from the lower surface of the inferior surface of the pubic symphysis to the center point of the sacral promontory. Okay, so that is actually diagonal conjugate. Okay, so this is actually a diagonal conjugate. So diagonal conjugate is actually one, why we call it as diagonal conjugate is that is the one which can be measured. Okay, so with the diameter we can usually measure it. Okay, so that is why it is called as diagonal conjugate. Okay, so in the inlet you have to remember three AP diameters. One is a true conjugate, the other one is a obstetric conjugate, the third one is a diagonal conjugate. And generally they ask you in the exam, how do you measure diagonal conjugate? Okay, so after informing the patient that you are going to do an internal pelvic examination, take the verbal consent, ask her to empty the bladder, ask her to make her lie down in the dorsal position, ask her to come to the edge of the table. Then with the sterile technique, you insert your two fingers into the posterior fornix as high as possible. Okay, so insert your fingers as high as possible. Most of the time sacral promontory is not reached. Okay, so to do that you have to depress your elbow. You cannot be going straight, you have to depress your elbow so that you will try to reach the sacral promontory. Most of the time it is not reached. Okay, that itself means that diagonal conjugate is adequate. So you need not measure. If you are able to reach it, then you have to take a measurement. Okay, take out your finger with a, okay, whatever you have measured, keep your finger that you are able to reach it till here, come out, and then you have to measure this distance. Okay, so that will be the diagonal conjugate. If you deduct 1.5 to 2 centimeter from the diagonal conjugate, you will get the obstetric conjugate. So approximately generally true conjugate is around 11 centimeters and obstetric conjugate is around 10 to 10.5 centimeters, whereas diagonal conjugate is generally it is approximately 12 centimeters. Okay, so diagonal conjugate is usually 12 centimeters. Okay, so these are the diameters which are important in the inlet. Okay, coming to the cavity. Cavity is uniformly round. It usually starts in the anteriorly it starts at the midpoint of the pubic symphysis. Okay, and to the junction of the S2 and the S3 vertebra. Okay, so from the junction to the midpoint of the pubic symphysis, it is uniformly round. It actually crosses over the greater sciatic foramina, the soft tissues covering around the greater sciatic foramina to the S2 and the S3 junction. Okay, so that is the cavity which is uniformly round and approximately 12 centimeter in all the diameters. Both anteroposterior, transverse and oblique all are 12 centimeters. Okay, you should know that it is actually starts from the midpoint of the pubic symphysis to the soft tissues covering over the greater sciatic foramen and to the junction of the S2 and S3. Okay, so cavity is the one which is a round. It is usually a bigger space, 12 centimeter in all the diameters. It is also called as plane of greatest pelvic dimension. Okay, so cavity is the one which is uniformly round and it is also called as plane of greatest pelvic dimension. Okay, it is from the midpoint of the pubic symphysis to the S2 S3 junction. Okay, then coming to the obstetric outlet. So in the outlet you have something called as obstetric outlet and the anatomical outlet. Okay, obstetric outlet is the space between the least pelvic dimension and the anatomical outlet. Okay, so what is plane of least pelvic dimension? What is anatomical outlet? These two you should know. The space between these two is actually obstetric outlet. Okay, so plane of least pelvic dimension. The plane of least pelvic dimension is the narrowest part of the pelvis. It starts from below the cavity. Where the cavity ends, it starts from there and it usually ends at the anatomical outlet. So that starts from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis. So that starts from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis, goes to the two ischial spines on the either side. Okay, from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis to the ischial spines on the either side. Okay, and to the tip of the S5, fifth sacral vertebra, that is to the tip of the sacrum. Okay, so from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis anteriorly, the plane of least pelvic dimension starts anteriorly from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis, passes through the ischial spines and meets at the tip of the fifth sacral vertebra. Okay, this is the narrowest plane of the pelvis, which has got lot of obstetric significance. The important part is internal rotation usually happens at this level. Okay, so sometimes in the exam they ask you what are the other things which happen at this level, plane of least pelvic dimension, or also called as at the level of ischial spines, what are the other things which is importance of obstetric or any gynecological importance. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is the narrowest plane of the pelvis, and it is important because internal rotation happens at this level. Most of the obstructed labors, arrest of the labors usually happen at this level, ischial spines, like we call it as a deep transverse arrest and all that. So that we diagnose only at this level only. Okay, most of the obstructed labors are also diagnosed at this level, and you know that the origin of the levator ani is actually at the level of the ischial spines. If you want to give a pudendal block, ischial spine is a landmark for you. Okay, even if you want to tell the stations -1, 0 below, then again ischial spine is a landmark for you. And if you want to do a sacrospinous ligament fixation in case of wall prolapse also, this is a landmark. Okay, so there are many things which can happen at the level of the ischial spines. So that is one more exam question what they will ask you. Okay, so that is the plane of least pelvic dimension. That is the narrowest plane of the pelvis, which has got lot of obstetric significance, mainly because internal rotation happens at this level, and most of the arrest of the labor, obstructed labor, usually happens at this level also. Okay, so that is the plane of the least pelvic dimension. Next is the anatomical outlet. So anatomical outlet again starts from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis, but it passes through the ischial tuberosity. Okay, plane of least pelvic dimension was through the ischial spines. Okay, whereas anatomical outlet is actually from the it actually starts from the inferior border of the pubic symphysis, ischial tuberosity. Okay, then there is a sacrotuberous ligament. Okay, and the tip of the coccyx. Okay, so the anatomical outlet is actually to the tip of the coccyx. Okay, so that is why it is a bigger diameter. Okay, because coccyx is a mobile one, sacrococcygeal joint is a mobile one, and usually when the head is engaged, it usually presses on the coccyx, which moves the coccyx backwards, which increases the diameter by another 2 cm. Okay, so this is approximately 13 centimeters. Okay, so here in the outlet, the biggest diameter is actually the anteroposterior diameter, that is from the tip of the sacrum to the tip of the coccyx to the inferior border of the pubic symphysis, that is around 13 centimeter. Here the transverse diameter in the outlet is actually between the two ischial tuberosity. Okay, it's also called as bituberous diameter, or the nothing but transverse diameter of the outlet. It is also called as transverse diameter of the outlet, or the bituberous diameter. Approximately it's around 11 to 11.5 centimeters. Bituberous diameter, or the one where you can fit around your 4 knuckles you should be able to fit into the bituberous plane. Okay, so that is the anatomical outlet. So the plane between the least pelvic dimension and the anatomical outlet is the obstetric outlet. Okay, so you should know about the plane of least pelvic dimension. You should remember the diameters in the outlet. Okay, so that is about the maternal pelvis. Okay, so we'll start with the mechanism of labor.